If you're in church, friends with all the girls in your food or whatever, And he's the guy that could talk to anyone. And, it's not just being really, dorky, doing all sorts of really stupid things, but, just, the guy's downright smooth. Now, there was the guy who was my best friend growing up, he was that guy. He was Mr. Smooth. And he knew how to talk to everybody. It was just such an envious place to be. And then there's the clown, right? There's the guy that's the total goofball. The total clown, doing the most ridiculous things possible, and then realizing that he has done one ridiculous thing, realizing that he has to top that next time, and just escalates, and he's weirder and weirder and weirder. Now, this is the clown. And then there's Captain Oblivious. And you guys are just, fill in the blanks there. Now for girls, there's Little Miss Attitude, you realizing that you're something, you're realizing that you're pretty, and you're like, I don't want to talk to these boys. You're giving them the attitude, you're not giving them, space to talk to them. There's what I call cutesy-wootsy. It's all your, now, I hope you don't offend it, I know some of you guys are still like this. Get your cute little pens, cute little stationery. Everything is so cute about everything that you do, and you're so cute. There's that type. And then again, there's Captain Oblivious, which is pretty much the same across the board. My wife objected when she saw this. She's like, there's also Miss Spunky, which I was. My wife was a really spunky girl. And, there's all sorts of types. And, when I look at this, some of you are still like this. And I don't say that necessarily, in a condescending way. What I mean is that this is not just a stage that we go through when we're in junior high. This is something that we revisit. It's something that's cyclical, I think. And I think that the stages that I'm sharing them with you today are not necessarily chronological, but just things that we go through in life. But the question remains, okay, well, if this is kind of what we experience, is this healthy? Granted, physiologically speaking, you have to go through this phase. If you're going to become an adult, you have to, your body has to change. And the way that your body changes affects the way that your brain changes, right? The way that you think. And so some of that is necessary. But a lot of us get stuck in these patterns. And when I look at this carefully, I begin to realize, when I think back to my junior high days, I think, what was I doing? The girls that I liked, especially this one who was a good friend of mine today, what did I do to express how I liked her? I made fun of her. I insulted her, I did all these terrible things to her. And that was the way we just didn't know how to do it. And why do we do these things? Why do we sort of play the clown? Why do we kind of pretend that we're smooth? But inside we're insecure. There's all sorts of reasons as to why, but I think part of the root of it is that it exhibits selfish behavior. It's rooted in a self-centeredness. Because you see, all these sorts of things are a way for us to attract other people to us and say, look at me. Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. As a young guitarist, for me it was, hey, look at me. I played in a band that played Beatles and Led Zeppelin. We were a garage band, we did gigs and stuff like that. And part of the whole deal was, hey, look at me, look how cool I can be. And the way I started to dress was, hey, look at me. And that became my MO. It was sort of a thing that, even if I was going to play the clown, or if I was going to try to be smooth, or I was going to try to be, the rock star kind of guy, everything was pointing to me. And friends, I think that a lot of us are stuck there. And the way that we relate to each other, cross-gender, reflects this, hey, look at me sort of attitude. And that's really scary, I think. But what kind of calling is there for the Christian? Rather than exalting the self and focusing on the self and lifting up ourselves, Jesus says in John chapter 15, my command is this, love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid his life down for his friends. And as we know from biblical accounts, Jesus did die for the sake of those that he loved. It's a radical sort of life. It's a radical approach to relationships. And I do believe that there's a relationship issue involved in the way that Jesus describing this here. And I don't necessarily think that it's, specifically cross-gender. I think that would be taking me out of context. But I think the principles apply. You see, the Christian or the biblical principle is that of sacrifice. What is the huge problem? The problem is this, is self-centeredness. It goes against all that the Bible has to say about self-sacrifice, about personal identity, and love. And what's the solution to this? I'm going to give you what may feel like a really cheap Sunday school answer. Solution to Jesus. Every answer is Jesus. And I don't mean that lightly. I really do mean it. Because as we're going to see, Christ gives us the example of the kind of life that if we apply that in our cross-gender relationships, we would see a kind of health that would just be remarkable and amazing. But we all get past this stage, some parts of our life, and we return to it. But a second stage that was very significant for me was a stage of making mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's a part of our fallen human condition, right? It's part of who we are as human beings. We're bound to make mistakes. As Christians, we believe that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's what Romans 3:23 teaches us. That all of us are broken people. That all of us will make mistakes. And that means not only is our relationship with God marred, but so too is our relationship with one another. It can be plagued by self-centeredness. It can be plagued with us trying to meet our own needs beyond the needs of others. You don't need to look very far to see examples of this, do you? I mean, our sitcoms are based on this, and actually it's sad that we laugh about it when we watch the sitcoms that we watch. The divorce rate is immense in the United States, and in also other parts of the world. And sadly enough, there's no marked difference within the Christian body with regard to divorce compared to the rest of the country. We don't need to look far to see examples of how men and women make colossal mistakes when it comes to cross-gender relationships. It's just a sign that we're all broken people. I had a close relationship with a girl in high school. My girlfriend and I, we tried to date long distance when I came here at Northwestern. For a while, it was working out really well. We became very serious. I had met with her family, she had met with mine. Granted, we were, freshmen and sophomores in college. Things really were progressing, we thought. But towards the end of that relationship, I made a really huge mistake. I broke it off because I felt like my life was dominated by that relationship. So much so that I could hardly focus on my relationship with God. When I sat